Brad Logan alongside Jared Redding as we come to the conclusion of day one, or actually day two of the College World Series. But for Ole Miss, it's day one, and it's a win on day one.
It's a win on day one, and I think, it's hard to describe this game without mentioning the name Dylan DeLucia first. I mean, you talk about what this Ole Miss pitching staff has done just the past 3 games, but I mean, with Dylan, he's just kind of keeping it going. I mean, you have 114 pitches, you give up only 4 hits. 3 of those were, in the later innings in the 7th inning, where he eventually left out of 7 2/3. But man, 10 strikeouts. He retired his first 14 straight, and we just followed up a good start with Ole Miss offensively, because they started off, 2-0. They strung together a bunch of 2-out hits. It was no exception in the first inning. Just kind of set the tone for the very beginning and just led to a win.
History makers, and you see in the postseason, Jared, history gets made. And from an Ole Miss baseball perspective, we remember the days of the Pomerantz games, the Scott Biddles. All of a sudden today, we've got a game that we watch, and Josh Mallitz comes in, relieves, but more importantly, Dylan DeLucia pitches game of his life.
I mean, you could probably argue that, because obviously you're in the big stage right here. I mean, there were 25,000 people to watch him, as opposed to 12,000, 11,000 at Swayze Field or any other SEC environment. Pitched in a big environment against Arkansas right here. But I think that's one way you can kind of look at it. You talked about some of those great pitching performances in the past, with Drew Pomerantz or any of the other ones. I think this goes right up there with it, and they just kind of keep coming with this Ole Miss pitching staff. I mean, they've only given up 1 run in the last 3 games. Obviously, didn't allow a single run in the Super Regional, but this is just another one just to kind of add to the pile.
A big game by Kevin Graham. We spoke to him at the end of the game. Although Kemp Alderman struck out twice, that hit early in the game, the 2 RBI single, that proved to be a big point in this game.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I kind of got at earlier was, you had to go right after him. I think it's something that we talked about in pregame, and, it came with 2 outs, and Bianco talked about, especially, with hitting and all that in postseason, it's more important that you get that timely hit, and especially when you get runners in scoring position. He credited Mike Clement for that, because he has a knack of, trying to do that. And you kind of saw it on display, with obviously all the 2-out runs that they got, that one being one of them. And there was one that even Kevin Graham's home run, I believe, was with 2 outs as well. It was almost robbed. It was almost a great play by them, but at the same time, it cost them a couple runs, and at the same time, held on the rest of the way. Dylan Mallitz, he was the first one who got called out of the bullpen, and he just does exactly what I thought he would.
We talked with Mike Bianco at the end of the game, and he talked about when he went to the mound to talk to DeLucia, and he kind of smiled. We know he was going to probably take him out, and I think DeLucia even intimated in the press conference, hey, Coach, let me try to get the end of this game.
Yeah, he's kind of like a cyborg if you really look at it. I mean, he's just, one of the first questions I asked him was, like, even if I was a pitcher on the mound, even if I knew that, I was having success and knew that I retired 14 straight, I'd be like, oh, shoot, I can't mess this up and all that. And I asked him, I was like, is that – does that ever cross your mind when you get through there, or is it just kind of, a short memory? He was just basically like, literally, just, one at bat has life as its own. Just take care of that one, move on to the next one. And so it's that.
1 earned run over the last 30-plus innings out of this pitching staff. Another stat, the Ole Miss baseball team, the only undefeated team left in the postseason. But the number one stat, Dylan. Good game, Dylan. Jared, the number one stat I wanted to ask you about was taking a look at this baseball team winning today. Butch Thompson, give Coach Thompson credit here for Auburn. I think he said, 46 out of the last 50 years, or at least
36 of the last 40.
36 out of the last 40. In any event, it was an obscene number. The teams that win the opening game versus teams that lose on the opening game that go on to win a national championship. Ole Miss is in a really good position.
And obviously, and especially with Ole Miss being a good position on its own, obviously only using their guy out of the bullpen only like 1 1/3. So I mean that's good enough with what you got right there. But you look at the teams that start 1-0 in that same thing. You look at the teams that start 2-0, it's a similar thing. Last year's national champion Mississippi State, very similar scenario. Another team came up with a timely hits, and you're kind of seeing that with this team this year.
You were here. Everybody at home was watching. As I look over to my left, these stands were full of red and blue. The previous game, these stands were full of Arkansas fans. I'm going to say Monday night it's going to be an electric atmosphere in the winner's bracket here at Charles Schwab Field.
Yeah, I mean, I think the announced capacity was 25,000. I think the listed capacity for the stadium is 24,000. So I'm no math major, but I think that's a sellout crowd if you ask me. And I think, we saw them calling the Hogs when they made big plays. Of course they annihilated Stanford in the way they did that. Ole Miss fans were loud, especially. You hear, "Are you ready?" Hell yeah, damn right. Like right. You would see. You would see that. You would see that their presence felt, and you're going to have 2 of those kind of going into one. and this is a neutral site game. Obviously, Ole Miss Arkansas played last time in Fayetteville, and it's going to be advantage one way or another. Just whoever can get in, whoever can make the most noise happen. Obviously, you'd think they have some sort of advantage, depending on where they are right now.
Collegiate baseball freshman All-American Hunter Elliott's going to go for Ole Miss in a couple of days. He's going to go up against a really good Arkansas team, a team that Ole Miss is very familiar with. They lost 2 out of 3 in Fayetteville this year. Arkansas, a really good baseball team, but we heard from Mike Bianco earlier in the winner's bracket. This baseball team for Ole Miss is very opportunistic, and I thought that's a pretty good word. They take advantage when they get the opportunity.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because, you talk about some good performance from DeLucia. That Arkansas game was one of them, and then you look at the next day with Hunter Elliott, still was great, but at the same time his offense was 0 for 17 with runners in scoring position. So that was a big missed opportunity and may have honestly decided the series against Arkansas. I think that was the game that was decided by the walk-off, if I'm not mistaken. But, that was, more than a month ago.
Right.
And, here we are sitting here June 18th, or excuse me, June 20th when these two teams play, and it's a different story. And I think, you saw that with this team, especially when they had runners in scoring position. At times they took advantage. They did strand multiple ones a couple times, but, it was good enough to get the win. And so it's going to be a big thing when, Monday rolls around.
Ole Miss is in the winner's bracket of the College World Series here in Omaha, Nebraska. Brad Logan alongside Jared Redding. It's been an absolute pleasure working for you guys back home at Reps247.com. We encourage you all to stay tuned to the website, Inside the Rebels. There's football commitments going on right now. And by the way, a ton of stories, a ton of pictures, and we're so excited to bring you all the content at Inside the Rebels, an affiliate of 247 Sports. For Brad Logan, for Jared Redding, I am indeed Brad Logan, and we're so honored to be along for the ride here with you. We'll talk to you soon right here on Inside the Rebels and Reps247.com.